Welcome to Backroom Talk.
It's so important to acknowledge that Jesse OBrien isn't just any coach.
You know, I was kind of touched by James, metaphorically speaking.
I'm like, dude, I don't know about you, man.
There's a dilemma in the fitness industry is that if I'm a coach, you know, I might make $36,000 per year. It's this hodgepodge career. There's no benefits. What do you do when there's time off? We're sick, we're unhealthy, but we can't even make enough of a living. I have a calling to, I guess, ride in James's wake and provide a sustainable career for other people.
To listen to more Backroom Talk, be sure to subscribe. Learn to design personalized programs with the OPEX system of coaching by heading to opexfit.com.
So Jesse, do you mind just kicking us off and sharing a little bit about who you are and what it is you do?
So I am the founder and head coach over at Central Athlete, and I have been kind of in this line of work as strength and conditioning coach since 2009. Really, the beginning of my journey, started in group class fitness, and similar to a lot of people who are probably watching this call or yourselves, I was kind of touched by James, metaphorically speaking.
I'm like, dude, I don't know about you, man.
And just his message really resonated with me. I was experiencing exactly what he was talking about of, I was, call it 18 months into CrossFit, like very intentionally, and I had plateaued. I'm not getting stronger. And, my aerobic stuff was still getting a little bit better, but it became very unfulfilling to me. And so that kind of spawned this whole journey. And, I sold, the former kind of group class model business that we had. And then I started, Central Athlete in 2015. And, we've been growing and, doing a better job ever since. And, really it gave me the opportunity to do something that I love in a way that I believe that it's going to be sustainable. And I had this hard point where I remember my wife and me were going to Hawaii, and we were there and we're like, man, this is so awesome. We just get to experience life. And, we were visiting one of my buddies, and he was just about to start a family. His wife was pregnant. And so we were starting to talk about those things. And it's like, okay, we're out of town for 2 weeks. We're spending money. I'm not making any money because I'm physically gone from the gym and I'm so transactionally bound. And, we were like, we can't go back to the same thing. And so that was like the inception of Central Athlete right there. And so now it's, really what James and, what he was talking about, maybe in 2011, 2012, when I kind of connected with him, that has just given us longevity in our career, and it allows us, like we had our first son eight months ago. I couldn't even picture having a family, like, working the AM shift and the PM shift, and you're gone 14 hours per day. So anyway, here we are, 2020. We have a little bit over 100 clients at Central Athlete. We are hiring our fourth coach, begins this upcoming Monday. We have an operations person, a marketing person. So it's cool to feel everything kind of starting to come together. And, I just get to do what I love every single day.
So take us back to 2009 when you are first getting into opening the gym. Like, how did fitness become this thing that you wanted to make your full-time gig?
I went to TCU, Texas Christian University, and I graduated with a business degree. And I knew I wanted to kind of be in control of my life, live an intentional existence. And so, I graduated with an entrepreneurship degree, and I started off in corporate America. And it was like 3 months of like the worst 3 months of my life. And like, I'm energetic, I'm engaged. I'm like, just want to do whatever I can in life. And I was so lethargic. I was so tired. I'll like never forget that. And I kept sleeping in a little bit later. I sneak off to my car during lunch and skip lunch and just sleep in my car. I was so bored and not stimulated. And I was like, I just can't go through life. Even if I was, clearing $250,000 per year and had maybe some excitement from that, it was just so horrible. And 3 months in, I was just, I can't do this. And so, I was still, very much engaged in fitness. It was like my hobbies, what I loved to do. I was a gym rat through college. I played sports prior to that. And, I had the opportunity, I had my CrossFit level 1 certification. I had the opportunity to coach, 2 6 a.m. classes, Tuesday and Thursday. And that was the beginning of it. And, my experience was, very much, like the analogy of being like the bagger in a grocery store. I started very much in the ground level of just, learning how everything functioned from there. And then I came into a managerial role, and then an ownership role. And then eventually I kind of created my own, platform and company. But it really, a lot of what drove this was just something my dad said, which is, essentially just do what you love. He was a photographer and took a kind of like carved his own path in life. And, he loved every single day of what he did, but, there's a lot of challenges associated with working with the labor of love. And a lot of times, we sacrifice the financial piece. And so that's something that I've been very motivated to do, not only for myself and my family, but also everybody around me, like the coaches around me. Is that there's a dilemma in the fitness industry is, I'll just speak here in Austin, but I think nationally, I think this echoes that, if I'm a coach, I might make $36,000 per year because I coach a boot camp in the morning. I then go to somebody's house for 2 sessions. And then there's this lull in the middle of the day. And then I go to some sort of other gym where I pay a rental fee and I'm personal training for clients in the evening. And then I have this 6-hour gap. And so it's this hodgepodge career. There's no benefits. What do you do when there's time off? And I just think that's really, I don't know, it's kind of, I understand what it is, but it's just sad because, people are out of touch with their bodies. I mean, I just was reading some research the other day, and they were making an argument that relative to normative body fat percentages, 69% of children, 91% of adults are outside of a healthy normative body fat percentage. We're sick, we're unhealthy. And I feel like, a lot of these fitness professionals are very well-intentioned people who are leading this cause for proactive healthcare, but we can't even make enough of a living to even put food in the family for our tables. And so I have a calling to not only help people, but also to, ride in James's wake and provide a sustainable career for other people who, are lifers who are going to do this for a long period of time, the rest of their lives. But a lot of this was just, a lot of it started in 2009 and some of the challenges that I experienced, that just pushed me and pushed a lot of motivation to where I am today.
I so distinctly remember that feeling at the beginning of my career in coaching, reading an article in the CrossFit Journal that was, I think it was titled "Beyond $20 an Hour," around how a coach can actually have sustainable income, and just feeling like, in the gym I'm in right now, I don't know how I can ever get to that point beyond $20 an hour. What does it look like when I'm 30, want to have kids, and grow beyond that? And that's a really disheartening feeling for a lot of people that are getting into it because they're passionate, but can't see what the steps are into the future. That's really rough. So what made you decide to pursue it? You realized that there were potential limits to how much someone could make as a fitness coach, but you decided to go that way anyway, and you said goodbye to corporate America. Was it just out of love and hope, or did you have a plan at that point?
No, I mean, my parents have always, and I don't agree with this perception necessarily, but they always have called me kind of impulsive by nature. But sometimes when I'm just confronted with, here's the reality of it is you can play out time. It's I hate what I'm doing and I'll probably make more money doing that. And that's likely not going to maybe there's some changes and they get different, more compelling work in corporate America, but this is likely how it's going to be. And then over here, I love it. I'm researching at work, strength and conditioning principles. And I'm looking at videos of different exercises, and I'm just so stimulated by this. And I really believe that if we follow the things that we just naturally gravitate towards, that eventually things kind of work out in the end. And I know that's maybe a little esoteric, but I'm going to be more willing to I don't see this as work, right? So, I'm more apt to put in a lot more effort, and I'm a lot more motivated to help the client succeed and do my research and fund my own continuing education without keeping score of all these things that I've done along the way. And I guess, in a way it's kind of like my father's path of just, he talks about, in 1989, he photographed Warren Buffett, right? A prolific value investor. And one of Warren Buffett's adages is, every day I go into work, I feel like I'm tap dancing. I'm just so elated to do what I'm doing. And so I think from a young age, that's been put into my brain of, just love what you do, and it kind of works out in the end. But there obviously has to be a clear plan. You can't just, kind of cross your fingers and, I don't know, hope it happens. You have to have a clear plan to make sure things are kind of moving forward. And it's difficult because there is not a path really carved out for a lot of fitness professionals. I think OPEX and other great places are helping to change the landscape a little bit, but it's still really, really challenging for people. So that continues to be a, motivating aspect of my career.
What are some of the mistakes that you're seeing? Because you mentioned a couple minutes ago, Jesse, that there's a lot of well-intentioned fitness coaches and trainers around the world that are trying to take a proactive approach in this whole thing. What are mistakes that you're seeing, let's just say in your local community there in Austin, that these coaches and trainers are making to not be able to put food on the table?
A lot of devaluing goes on, a lot of it. When quarantine hit, I'm walking down, I'm just trying to get out of my house every now and again, and I'm doing a loop, on kind of the block that I live on. And I noticed that there's another garage gym kind of in the neighborhood, and big screen, and you could tell the guys kind of like speaking, doing a Zoom class. And, I start to talk to some of these people that are doing it, and it's, like $5 a session. And of course, it's a completely different model, and I don't want to pass judgment on anybody, but just doing the math, you just have to have, massive amount of clients and a following. And I'm not sure the specifics of this, person who lived in my block, but, I truly believe that, we live in a very, very confusing landscape, right? So let's talk about nutrition for a second. You have vegans over here who are like, don't eat meat, it's going to kill your health. And then you have the carnivores over here saying vegans are weak and stupid, and you got to eat the meat to be strong and healthy. It's so confusing as to what to do from a nutritional standpoint. Same with exercise. Do we do high rep? Do we do low rep? Do we do a little bit of everything? Should we cycle in yoga? So we have the ability as coaches to look at the literature, distill a lot of that information, and then apply that to individuals. And I think there is a massive, massive value proposition for coaches to be able to do that. But when we're charging $5 for, these interactions with clients, it really seems like it's going to be difficult to kind of elevate the profession. I mean, it's a race to the bottom. It's very much like a Walmart model. You just need a massive amount of people, but not everybody's able to do that. So I think the biggest thing that comes to my brain is devaluing the fitness professional.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is solved with a simple conversation, Jesse, right? Because I know that, we've both had conversations with coaches in the past where it's like we have the what are you worth conversation. And, some coaches devalue themselves, or trainers devalue themselves, because they truly don't think that what's inside of their brain is worth, let's call it $250, $300, $350 a month, depending on what model they're sitting inside of. So because the cost of entry is null and void, there really is no cost of entry to be a coach or a trainer in most people's eyes, right? It's like, what if that person that was in that garage that was doing the Zoom class, like they just read an article saying like you should probably get together a bunch of people, throw it on Zoom and charge a couple bucks an hour to make some side cash, right? Like maybe they didn't have any amount of competency, and maybe they weren't what we would call a coach that could actually hold a high dollar value when it comes to, their personal value for their service. And I just say that, Jesse, because we have to understand that, and I know that you know this, but we have to understand that all coaches aren't created equal, right? Like we can't get on and talk to, thousands of coaches around the world and be like, you're worth way more than you're charging, because a lot of coaches actually aren't worth more than they're charging. They're probably worth less than they're charging, right? Depending on what service they're giving and all of that. But let's say the competency is there, right? And they are devaluing their service. Usually that comes from a good place though, right? They're like, I have all of this information in my head and I just want to help a bunch of people, right? And gosh, man, like I think we've all been in that scenario where we're like, I know these things and I know that these things can help a lot of people get better at something or feel better or be healthier. And I don't want that barrier of entry for those people to be so high. So that's when we get stuck in that let's call it like that loop that's so hard to get out of, where we're like, okay, I'm going to charge you $20 a month. I'm going to charge you $60 a month. I'm going to charge you know what I mean? Where it's like, I just want to help as many people as possible. But usually those people just, a really good conversation that lays out, this is how you should do it based upon your model and how you can actually scale this thing if all you want to do is this thing. Because like you're saying, if you can't put food on the table, you can't do this thing for any amount of time, or that amount of time is going to be very short. So I think there's a couple different camps of coaches and trainers, and we can't just, shout out to, all coaches around the world and say you have to value yourself here, because we have to have an understanding, and we have our definition of what a good coach is, right? I think if we had a conversation, actually, let's do that. What do you think a good coach is?
I mean, competency comes to mind. I guess you would have to define competency, but I think there might be an understanding of, what that entails. I think there's a degree of professionalism. I think there's a degree of experience. And along with that experience, I think, results. I think one of the best things is having a past record of results to demonstrate that you're going to be competent in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree 100% with all those pieces. So let's say those are good coaches. So it's like, let's talk to those coaches and say, hey, you're devaluing your service if they are, and let's give them some education on, this is what you should be charging. This is what you should value yourself at. And then the coaches that aren't good coaches yet, based on that definition, which I think we would all agree, it's like, this is how you become a good coach, right? And it's like, it's just a loop of just like making the fucking system better, right? Where it's like, hey, everyone can be a good coach. Like, this isn't like it's almost that idea of like, what's good enough or what's smart enough or who's smart enough, right? Like, I think Einstein's IQ was like 140 or 150. And there's people walking the earth right now that have 170s, 180s, right? So it's like, there's that idea of like, how smart is too smart, or how good is too good, or what is just good enough, right? And I think a lot of really, really great coaches sit more in line with that, just good enough, right? Like, they know all the things that they need to know. They're not like so smart on the IQ scale that they're not sociable and they can't hold a conversation with someone. And I think if we look across all industries, right, like the just good enough people that have, that are just smart enough, and let's say like the difference between, going to the University of Michigan for law versus Harvard for law. It's like, who's the better lawyer? It's like, I think it's probably about 50-50. Like, you get some really good lawyers coming out of both of those programs because they're all smart enough. But if you're on the higher level, it's like, where are you coming out of the back end there? So I think getting the highest amount of coaches to being just smart enough is where we need to get all of our coaches that want to make a real life out of this thing. And I think they would all check the boxes of what you just called a good coach.
To play with that idea of the good coach a little bit, Jesse, do you think that since that moment in 2009 that you started coaching, like, were you a good coach then? And were there any moments, if not, that you realized, hey, I'm missing something on the competency, the results, missing something there, and then what did you do about that, if so?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody early on in their career is going to lack degrees of competency, experience, and then enough of like a timeline to be able to demonstrate, results. There's this kind of adage, who knows if it's kind of true, but they say for any like personal practice, like a therapist, a lawyer, a fitness professional, it takes about 3 years, for you to have had enough experiences with clients for them to be able to like talk to their friends, start to refer people back. It starts to kind of build a business. And, I definitely was well-intentioned. I was great at building relationships. And I would say my strongest asset was connecting to the individual. And I think that's really, a foundational piece. But I was missing a lot of pieces on top, of just, specific strength and conditioning knowledge. I kind of catalyze people's results by just knowing more and having more experiences, having run different people through different scenarios. So, I definitely think, it's I mean, you even call it like the quest to get 10,000 hours. I think that the more experience we get, the more confident we're going to get if we're kind of moving through some form of deep practice of like, what did I do with this client? What was successful? What was not successful? How can I kind of iterate this for the next client, taking the lessons that I learned here and keep kind of applying that model as we go forward, versus just kind of being unconscious and, all right, 3 sets of 10, rest a minute, superset, just the kind of plug and play model. So I do think there also is, it's just a characteristic component that can't be taught. And that's this, just this drive, this yearn to get better. I'm built out of the generation that, my mom told me I was a very special kid and I could do whatever I want to do. And I think I just have that growth mindset instilled. It's a double-edged sword, where I might think I'm more confident and more special than I actually am. But there's something that's a piece of me, and I think some of my peers that really wants us to keep trying to get better and keep excelling for excellence. And I think, the more I learn, the more incompetent I begin to feel. And it's kind of one of those, things we've talked about in CCP. But I do recognize that every single year that goes by, I deliver better results, a better client experience. I'm more precise in my language and my expectations around clients. And actually, the most interesting thing I think is who I'm working with and who I'm attracting. Is I attracted a lot of these people that were just flaky and inconsistent in the beginning. And I do think that because I've been better at delivering what my expectations are as a coach, I've attracted the right people that's getting better results. Thus, there's more fulfillment to the client and the coach. And it just progresses me and motivates me even farther. So it's all an evolution since 2009. I would hate to say that I had it figured out right then. Looking back on that, I think I was very well intentioned, but I was rather green.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a coincidence that you're hitting your stride right now, Jesse. Because I mean, you're over a decade, right? So it's like, if we look at that 10,000 hour rule, it's like you're there, man, right? It's like you've been doing this thing extremely consistently for over a decade, and I don't think that it's a coincidence that Central Athlete is just, you guys are a leader right now in the industry and what you guys are doing and the success that you're finding and just what you guys are building in terms of actually having a system behind what you're doing. Like, you don't just have a couple coaches that coach 10 or 15 people and you're trying to make ends meet. Like, you guys are a growing company at this point, right? Like, you guys have a marketer, you guys have someone running your operations. It's like, you're able to coach the people you want to coach, your wife Amanda, and you just had a baby, and you guys are in a really good place, it looks like, man. So I don't think that that's a coincidence, man. So I think a lot of coaches that we talk to on a daily basis, it's like they're striving to be Jesse OBrien, right? In all reality, because Jesse's been extremely consistent. And I don't think that, and I kind of know some things, right? But it hasn't been without some struggle along the way, right? It's like, can you hit on some of the struggles that you've experienced throughout this decade? And because I think that's important, because coaches listening to this, they're probably experiencing that right now, and they're hearing like this great story of Jesse, and they're probably thinking like it's come easy to you, but we know that it hasn't.
Yeah. So part of me has always felt conflicted to share some of this because, of course I want to be vulnerable, but also like for my team is I always want to be, a strong leader and support a very like rosy tomorrow. And like, we got this thing, but to be honest, like, you touched on some good points. I mean, it has been a struggle. And I remember two moments, and it was the winner both times. And this is before I got into Central Athlete. And it was a cyclical business because I hadn't developed systems, right? So the most unfulfilling thing to me is like one of the main things that it just lights me up is I love getting people better. Like, there's something about like almost like I used to thought I was going to be a mechanical engineer, something about like tinkering and like replacing a part with a better part. There's something that's just so interesting about that. And like, okay, from an exercise and fitness standpoint, what inputs can I give somebody in the form of stress to like make them better? And so what became very unfulfilling is that we were working in a very high net worth part of Austin, and people would go out of town, spring break, summer vacation, winter vacation. So we would build these people up and get them so freaking fit and strong and lean and all these things, everything that they wanted. And then boom, they go out of town for spring break and they kind of detrain, the eat however they're going to eat. And then they come back and they're ruined the first 2 weeks because they're so sore. And then we build them back up and they're getting great shape, summer vacation, right? And they're gone for a while. And then I remember 2 winters where it got so bad from a financial standpoint that I had to literally call my boss and I had to ask for an advance of money because I, was that strapped. And, there's, as a male, that's just like a very low point. Like, we're supposed to be providers and leaders. And here we are, like, so motivated to do well, feeling like we're doing all the things. And like, we just can't put the pieces together because all my clients are gone during winter vacation. And I remember having this like feeling of like, this just feels so terrible. And I like, not just that, but questioning my career, like the finances, whatever, but questioning my career. Can I actually do this? And to compound that, I also had my parents that are, I'm going to start by saying they're my biggest supporters, but also, they're like, don't you think you should get like something a little bit more stable with healthcare and benefits and all these things? And I'm like, oh, hell no. Like, I'm not giving into, like, I'm going to make, so there's a degree of stubbornness that I like push through. And then when it happened a second, and even like there was a third time it happened, it's just like, I've weathered the storm before. Now with Central Athlete, again, you would think, boom, chapter, changed and everything's all good. But after I sold, the old business, I started from square one. Of course, we had a couple of clients that came with us. I couldn't like steal clients or anything. They had to naturally gravitate towards us. But, we moved from West Austin into Central Austin. I had no equipment. I had no anything. And so I have, expenses. I have, it's just me and my wife at that time. I reinvested back into Central Athlete for 5 years and I didn't take a full paycheck. And, maybe a little bit too much personal and stuff about money, but, just recently I started to pay myself, a full commission, just like all the other coaches. And, I made that decision to reinvest because I wanted to, get more resources, more people on the team, more equipment, have a better client experience. And I was willing to do that. But, as a 34-year-old male, it becomes very uncool when, your friend's company just IPOs and he's a millionaire overnight. And then I'm sitting over here and I'm just like, noticing that I put way too much money on a credit card because I had no other option. And I'm just feeling, again, that sense of like shame and guilt. And, of course, like, we're in a much better position. And, I got to a point where I pay myself a full amount. I'm maxing out savings. I paid off all debt and everything. So it was an investment that really, I see it as investing in my future. But there were so many times in there from like a financial standpoint where I'm like, I don't really know if I can make it. And I didn't even share that with my wife. I didn't really share that with, the team or anything. And, I just kept kind of going forward. And luckily, I think just being hard-headed and some perseverance, it worked out. But no, I can't even tell anybody how difficult, carving your own way in this field of work is. And I'm sure you guys have had your own struggles. And your own times when you've questioned, for me, it's always like, I don't really care what other people are doing, but when you just hear it, it kind of shook me up a little bit. And I just see what other people are doing and you hear some of these things and that questioning was always really troubling for me.
You mentioned perseverance and hard-headedness, but there also must have been a part of you that had the ability to think about the long term and have this vision of what Central Athlete was going to be one day. If you only invested in the way that you needed to and kept thinking about that end goal. Not everyone has that in them, like the ability to sacrifice short-term success for the long-term vision. Where did you learn to think about the long term and plan in that way?
Yeah, I think my dad, his labor of love was always photography. And again, he photographed Warren Buffett in 88, 89. And he's taken me to a lot of the, Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meetings. And so from a young age, I've just been waterboarded with like compound interest. And like money initially, like investing never really interested me for most of my life. But the concept of compound interest really did of, okay, if I spend my time, investing in like aggregation of knowledge or investing in my fitness, what's going to happen, years down the road. And I kind of thought of the same thing as, Central Athlete as, a same thing of just, keep investing, keep focusing on all these stories of business success are the same. It's consistency, it's hard work, it's having intelligent approach. Sometimes they talk about mentors, and it's like, you're doing all the right things right now. You have if this model works, it's going to work in Austin. There's no other place. Like Austin is one of the healthiest cities. Like, it's built around being outdoors. People want to look and feel good. Like, if I can't do this with these ingredients, then I'm letting down a lot of people. So I think a lot of those things really inspired me to kind of keep going.
Do you mind sharing, for those that don't know, what is Central Athlete and what do you guys do specifically?
Central Athlete is a health and fitness company. We're headquarters here in Austin, Texas. We have both a local business and a remote coaching business. We do what we consider personalized fitness. So, we prescribe nutrition, behaviors, fitness protocols to the individual. So everything is built from the ground up for the individual, whether, they've trained for 30 years or whether they're just trying to get into a good routine. The majority of our people, they really are in some way, shape, or form just trying to feel better about themselves. A lot of times that's in the form of, I want to improve my body composition and have a little bit of better energy for my hobbies and my kids. We will also work with a couple, performance people as well. And we have some, I guess exposure in the industry because we've developed, it was really actually interesting. Many people don't know the story, but I'm not sure if y'all know this, but back in, I think it was 2015 or 16, we were programming in Google Docs. And I think you guys were probably doing that back in the day. And there was one thing that just always irritated me. I think you had to hit Control Return to get to the next cell. And it was just always so dang efficient. And we were like, this is just driving me insane. And so I was working with a client who was a really great programmer. And so we were talking about this and he's like, this is so terrible. I was like, I know, it's so terrible. So we actually embarked on a project that we named Centurion. And we were building out essentially True Coach. And we come to find out that a guy named Casey, who's a CrossFit owner, is also building True Coach. And he's got a full-time developer, and he's 6 months ahead of us. And we were like, we can't compete with that. So we folded the cards. But when we were doing that, we started filming all these exercise videos. And I was like, well, let's keep this thing going. And that is the most simple concept of let's aggregate the most comprehensive functional fitness exercise library. But I think quarantine really painted a really interesting picture. Is I would never prescribe a single arm kettlebell Romanian deadlift or something like that till somebody has one dumbbell. So we were sitting at maybe 1,500 videos, and we felt like we had a pretty good robust amount of videos there. And then all of a sudden quarantine comes out and we add 450 new exercises to our exercise library because we have all these weird derivatives, a single arm dumbbell front rack drop lunge, single arm front rack kettlebell drop, all these interesting different things. And so our videos are nested on True Coach, which a lot of people get exposure to. And so we keep refining those videos, trying to categorize them, what muscles are used. So that's been a really interesting thing. And serendipitously enough, not only with True Coach, but with a couple other companies as well, as we began licensing that video library. And so something that started off is hey, I think this is just going to be a really valuable thing for the community is, when we used to type in videos, we go to YouTube, we say back squat. And then the first video is this dude and his friend, they got their shirts off and they're talking about low bar versus high bar back squat. It's a 17-minute video. And I was like, man, I just want a 20-second video of a squat. And so, that was really the concept. And we built that whole thing out, and it's turned into, this new revenue stream, this new opportunity for us. And so that's been something that's been really exciting from an entrepreneurial level as well. And, honestly, something that I appreciate about, what OPEX has done is, you guys have, not gotten involved in necessarily y'all are involved in the educational realm, and, y'all have digital products. And so y'all have inspired, myself and Central Athlete to think about, okay, how can we provide value outside of just, the coach and client? That's our bread and, our meat and potatoes. But we're also looking to continue to communicate our expertise through other mediums. And that video library, there's so many tech fitness startups just blossoming into the world. Especially with quarantine, like the amount of fitness apps has just, gone 2 or 3x. And so I think we have a lot of, or the community, ourselves included, have a lot of, valuable knowledge that, just somebody needs to do that project. And I can understand why nobody has actually done it now, getting into it and been doing it for 5 years. It was a big, thing to take on, but very rewarding.
It's funny that Casey got you as well. In 2015, developer friend of mine, Joe Tibaldi, he now owns Flex.co. Yeah, Joe. He ran our websites. We started to build our version of True Coach back in 2015. So we were rolling on this thing. We had the back end all figured out. He started developing, and this thing called Fitbot came out, and I was like, what the hell is this? So I start looking into it. I messaged it to Joe. I was like, dude, they got us, man. They're building the exact thing that we started to build. So we had to fold that. So we're in a very similar situation, man.
Shared frustration of programming in Google Sheets.
Yeah. Well, it was the same. I was fine with it. I was like, yeah, the whole. I think you meant you have to press Control Enter to go. To stay in the cell to go to the next line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was super annoying and very frustrating to me. And I programmed for Joe, and Joe would get these Google Sheets, and he'd be like, why don't we just build something? And I'm like, yes, let's build something. And we started to roll on this thing, man. And God, I put a lot of work into building out the back end, and we had a bunch of algorithms in there and stuff like that because we're going to add some automation to it as well. And Fitbot came out. And we folded it, man.
Right decision, but, ultimately, we got a better system, which was so necessary, especially, here 5 years later. So I'm at least grateful that, Casey took the reins, and he probably did it better than I could have handled it. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, I think we're talking to Casey next week or the week after that. But I was chatting with him on a call, I think a couple of weeks ago, and he was just telling me man, my hormones are still not back to normal because that was about 2 years of averaging 2.5 to 3 hours of sleep a night. Because I asked him, I'm like, dude, I remember in 2015, 2016, I'm like, I'm on Fitbot and I'm Eastern time, right? So it was I was asking support a question at 10 o'clock at night as I was wrapping up some one-off programming, and it'd always be Casey that would come up 13 seconds later, boom, boom, let me get into that for you, let me check it out. And I'm like, how did you do that? He's like, I literally didn't sleep for 2 years. He's like, I literally didn't sleep.
Oh,
and they just sold for a good amount of cash. So I'm sure he's like, it was worth it, but yeah, he's still recovering from that. So I'm glad I wasn't that guy, because I'm good with where my hormones are today.
Well, good for him. I'm happy for him, man.
Yeah, great guy.
So through, I guess, the last 6 months, because we can't ignore what's going on around us with coronavirus, but how's it affected your business and the way that Central Athlete operates?
Yeah, of course we have we have the overhead of a local facility here in Austin, and we had a mandatory closure. I think I blacked it out of my memory. I want to say it's 4 to 6 weeks. I want to say 6 weeks we had to shut down, and we had to refund facility fees. But honestly, we have a very, very reciprocal community, and we're very supportive and understanding. Our hands were tied. We've been relegated to shut down the gym and do all these things, and this is a tough place for a small business to be. And once that lifted, we actually had our best month ever. I think part of that is that we had diversified into a remote coaching business since 2015. So we had already been doing that for a while, and we had the systems in place. But also we just, very simply took our local clients and we shipped them into, a remote coaching business. Aside from that, we have, like I said, some other revenue streams that kept us afloat. And, when that, the mandatory shutdown in Austin lifted, From a financial standpoint, it kind of blossomed. Now we do feel like business is subdued. So if this is like, the max potential of our business right now, we do feel like it's kind of floating around, maybe like 80% of where it could be. Every time I look at a poll, there's different numbers, but, one out of every four people say that they won't be back, to a gym even when coronavirus is gone. I read another thing that said 57% of people said that next month, if gyms open, they wouldn't go back. So there's still this kind of consumer malaise about, I don't know. There's two different sides of it. Some people say gyms are breeding grounds for germs. And then, I forget where it was. I want to say it was like Norway. They did a big study of like 3,000 people, and they saw, between two different groups, essentially the people who went to the gym had no increase in coronavirus cases. But there's still this, like, people are unsettled about doing it. And, I don't want to get into necessarily the politics here or anything like that, but it's a little bit hard for me to wrap. It's a competing priority to a degree. It's like, the gym is trying to make people healthy. Now, of course, we have to be considerate of large people gathering and close transmission between people. But, this is something that really, in my opinion, I feel like is such a massive benefit. I mean, if we just take that study I cited in the beginning, if we do assume that, about 9 out of every 10 people are outside a healthy normative body fat percentage, we can't assume that people are going to be a little bit less resilient to different pathogens and diseases. The viruses are going to get the people who are more sick before they get the people who are more resilient and healthy. And so I think just balancing those two concerns of, keeping a very sterile and healthy and socially distant environment at a gym, but we need to get people moving forward in their health. And so I think we offer a vital ability to work with people on an individual basis. I wish there could be some public policy initiative that shifted things, but I'm starting to believe that it just has to be, or a big piece of the puzzle at least has to be done like one-on-one with individuals and help, where are you having obstacles, as we're talking to the clients and helping remove those obstacles and helping with education and working with them through all these stages of really it's behavioral to get them to a place where they're making better decisions that's truly supporting their health. So essentially we have this insurance policy, as an increased resiliency towards anything that might affect us. But, the reality is that people are uneasy about what it is that I offer. So, then there's remote coaching and all that. But I hope things change in the future, and I hope people can, kind of move on from this and come back and feel comfortable in the gym. I think we're part of the solution as well in terms of reassuring people and letting them know what we're doing to make sure that's the case.
Are you leaning more heavily into remote coaching at the moment because of those 25% or 57% or whatever the number is of people who are concerned about returning to the gym?
I would like to say that we are, but we don't have those assets completely built out. I think in a perfect world, I have, our local assets, our local marketing and our local operations team. And then I also have like the remote side of it as well. And so, we're in an early stage, kind of fitness business at this point with limited resources, bootstrapped together by, myself and my wife. And, if I was truly doing that, and to be able to, I think, confidently say that, I would have built out separate assets. We're doing our best to, speak to that and kind of, share those resources between both sides of our business. But it's something that we're definitely talking about and thinking about and trying to keep in the conversation. But, our goal is still to max out our facility here in town. And then from there, personally, I don't know if I want to expand into multiple locations. I think I would like to get into, continuing to build out the remote coaching side of the business and getting into, other business opportunities revolving around fitness and behavior and health and what have you.
Yeah, we're really leaning into the idea of kind of wrapping our brains around what remote coaching really is. And because right now when we think of remote coaching, and I think you would agree, we think of being able to coach someone in Europe, right? Like we think about, if you're in Austin, you're coaching someone in San Francisco, right? But kind of wrapping our brains around what if we could do a remote coaching what if we could start a remote coaching business, or just have that business or that service offering be an extension of what we're doing on site, and just really get our local community in this thing, right? And Austin's such a great place for that, where it's like, okay, cool, you live in, central Austin and you don't want to drive to East Austin. It's like, awesome, you can come to the facility whenever you want, but you're a local remote coaching client, and it's almost like this, this synergistic, like, you have a facility you have a home to come into if you want, but if you have a gym at home that you really enjoy training at, it's like, cool, we can still service you there. So we're really digging into that right now, and really redefining what remote coaching is, because we're still under the belief that the best version of it is if you're able to see your coach one-to-one once a month, right? Once every 2 months. If you have a facility and you can have a client that comes in once a week, once every 2 weeks, and you can kind of see them train, see them move. It's just like connection-wise, and then the economics of it, like retention and all of that, obviously that's a factor as well. But just really, redefining what local remote coaching is. I think that's something that's really interesting right now, especially in this day and age, and to serve the 57, 19, 75%, whatever the hell the percentage of people are that are not going to come back into the gym, and still, have that local feel and have a lot of people in your community directly that you're impacting.
Yeah, I completely agree. And really, I don't want to dismiss one of the things you touched on, which was just the retention side of things. We do, one of the great things that you guys always talked about in some of the educational stuff was, balancing, three stakeholders in a gym. So the client, the coach, and then the business owner. And if we're not making decisions that's going to balance all three of those stakeholders, then you really need to question that decision. And, having that kind of auxiliary service or remote coaching is so powerful, because then I would love to think that people choose me because I'm just the best coach in town and yada, yada, yada. But the number one determinant of why a consumer is going to choose a gym it's still location. Every single poll that I've seen, it comes back, it's a convenience thing. And so if somebody is moving, right, and they're moving away from East Austin, like you said, to North Austin, they can't physically be there. I just lost that client. And then as a business owner, if I'm struggling to make ends meet, a lot of times I can't focus on really leaning into the client experience. And so that just adds a little bit more of a buffer, because, retention goes up. I'm still able to maintain these long-standing relationships. I think it's such a powerful thing for people to consider. Now, you have to do it with a lot of integrity and professionalism and all these things, but I know that's been a vital aspect that has allowed us to have a really high retention rate relative to, a lot of other local brick and mortar fitness businesses, because if you're geographically distant, you can't service those people, not to mention the whole distance aspect, right? And so, Carl, if you're my client, you're going to travel, at least 2 to 4 weeks during the year. Most brick and mortar places, they can't service you. And so if I have that built into the expectations, there's such a powerful thing. And then as a coach, I'm more fulfilled because you're getting better results. You're more fulfilled because you're staying on track with your fitness. I think it's such a win-win for the business owner, the coach, the client, that it's kind of a no-brainer. Now, I don't want to just say that and everybody jumps on and starts doing it, because I think there's a lot of these specific things that need to be well executed in order for that to be done well. But I think it's a brilliant prospect for people who are motivated to do this for a long period of time and do it well, to really consider and to work with people who can help show them what that looks like.
Yeah, just going back to our competency conversation, 30 minutes ago, I don't think a lot of coaches out there are competent enough to just spin up a remote coaching only business today if they don't have a vast amount of experience coaching someone one-to-one, because it's just more difficult, right? It's like you'll get the one-off client that's super easy and they don't give you any problems and they're seeing results and they're 100% compliant and they don't really need you. They just need you to kind of steer their ship a little bit. I think we'll always get those, but if a coach doesn't know how to coach someone one-to-one in person, they're not going to know how to coach someone over Zoom, right? So I think that is important to, people listening, just like really take a step back and reflect on your experiences as a coach and understand what you're competent or where you're competent and where you're not competent, and make that decision if you want to spin up a true remote coaching business, if that's the right decision for you. Right now it is for a lot of people because they have no other choice. I was just going to say right now it is for a lot of people because they have no other choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be a well-intentioned effort. I don't think we do this out of fear and like this, we just have to make money somehow. I think, we do it because it's the right decision to kind of service our clients. To echo that point, what we're realizing from a hiring standpoint is actually people, our coaches who have had a background in personal training actually have had the most success, not only in our local business, but also a remote coaching business. And I mean, there's just so many things there. I mean, their ability to like form a relationship, their ability to like give a lot of value coaching on the floor, but all of that to me, it's like the necessary foundation that translates into remote coaching, because you have just this catalog of all these experiences and things that you've done over the years that just gives you the foundation to be really successful over in this. And so I do agree that, you do need to have that before you start thinking about this. Or maybe I just don't understand how it works. Somebody who doesn't have that experience and they go straight to remote coaching business. I just see a lot of holes and trouble with that. Maybe somebody can figure it out, but my brain can't put it together.
Yeah, it's crazy since March the amount of coaches and trainers that we're seeing that are trying to spin up remote coaching businesses. And there's like groups on Facebook that we're a part of, and there's one-off groups over here that we're a part of, and you just hear the questions that some of these coaches and trainers are asking, and you're just like, you need to either figure something else out, or the fact that you're asking that question just tells the world right there that you shouldn't be doing this thing. So those people are out there right now. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Jesse. We appreciate it, man, and keep being a leader and a great coach, and keep building the Central Athlete brand. And we look forward, whenever Paleo FX actually happens, we'll actually get there and do what we had planned this past year, man.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing you guys in Austin, and maybe I'll find myself into Scottsdale, any month but summer.
Good choice.
All right, brother. Stay with us for more Backroom Talk.
I was thinking about this like on my bike ride, because I do all my thinking when I'm riding my bike, but
is that the only time you think?
It's the only time I think. Don't think outside of that. I have my best thoughts and my clearest mind when I'm riding my bike in the morning. And it just struck me how vulnerable he was, especially as a dude, as a man in the fitness industry. It's hard to show weakness and say, I don't always have all the answers, or I'm struggling. And he was really upfront.
Yeah, we had to pry a little bit though, right? Like, let's call it the first quarter of the conversation, he was very stoic, and this is how it is, this is how it's going to be. And it was unfair because I know Jesse really well, right? And I just wanted to ask him, like, hey, what are the struggles that you've had, right? Because it's not what he's done and how he's gotten there hasn't been easy, right? Like, he's struggled to get there. Especially, I mean, we can look at anyone, and if they're successful in the model in which he's coaching, that's just hard, right? Like, because you're teaching an entire community, city, wherever you're at, a different way to do fitness, and he's done that extremely successfully, but over a long period of time, because he's been inside of the individual design model for as long as anyone has been inside of it. Yeah. So he's had a lot of struggles, and he gave us so many really good insights into how we got to where he is today.
Yeah, that's such an important thing for people listening in to remember, because he's got his Central Athlete spiel, and it's all, he speaks so confidently and with such certainty about what it is he does, but it's obviously taken time to get there. Yeah. He didn't have this beautiful polished gym and smoothly running operation always, and it's been through trial and error, and as you said, a whole lot of struggles along the way that he's gotten there.
Yeah, it was good to get his insight into what a good coach is, and what his definition of a good coach is, because I always love asking that question to who I perceive to be good coaches, because you always get different answers. Sometimes you'll just get coaches in our system that just mimic what they hear from us, and Jesse didn't do that, right? He took a little bit of a different route into what a good coach was, and it was good to ask him that on the spot, because he paused and he thought about it, and he gave us a really good answer. And I think even in that conversation, as we talked through that, I think we all started to realize, like, because we were talking about value and the value of a coach, I think we all started to realize that not every coach has equal value, right? And that's why I thought it was important to talk about who's a good coach and who's worth X amount of dollars, and why should anyone charge $5 versus $500 and all of that. So I think it was good to hear his perspective on that.
Yeah, again, I think it's easy to look at Jesse and everything that he's doing and think, I want to do that too. But you have to remember the time that went in before the finished product and the things that Jesse has done. He repeatedly talked about investing in himself. And it's so important to acknowledge that Jesse OBrien isn't just any coach.
Yep.